Hi, everybody. Welcome my guest, John Staub, fellow creative, director of growth marketing, worship pastor, music writer extraordinaire. And John, we share a mutual friend in Darren Cooper, who we both just think is the coolest person in the world, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. He's made me better all around as a person and as a creative.
Yeah, Darren is always watching and listening, so I wanted to come right out the gate and make sure that we give honor where honor is due. That Darren really is an amazing person, and if you're in the Indianapolis area and you're looking for somebody to do some video work, Darren's your guy, 1898creative.com. But that's not why we're here. You've seen Darren on the show before, and he's amazing. But today we're going to talk to John, just kind of all things creative process. One of the reasons that we're together and we're kind of just met each other for the first time in a digital realm a few minutes ago is because our mutual friend Darren said, man, the two of you would really get along. Y'all both nerd out about the same stuff with the creative process. And so I just asked John if he'd be willing to come on and talk about some of that stuff. And so he was so gracious with his time. So just kind of set the table for us real quick, John. I know you do a little bit of the worship pastoring, worship leadering stuff on the side, but you're also this director of growth marketing for Remodel Health. What does that mean? What does that involve?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking the question about kind of the two sides of my brain and two parts of my life. Creativity is part of who I am. I feel like I have zero chill when it comes to making things and creating things. And so when it comes to, worship leading and songwriting and the church stuff, I actually have about a decade of full-time vocational ministry. That is what I had done just following being a missionary, actually. So ministry and full-time church stuff was a huge part of my life. But I've always loved business. I've always loved numbers and spreadsheets. So I had an opportunity get presented to me to step into a technology company that was working a lot with nonprofits and churches with health insurance, which sounds like a big snooze fest. Except there were some creative things that were available where I was able to blend creating content, creating new ways of thinking about things and connecting stories to solutions. And so, I jumped into the business side of things around 7 years ago over at the company I'm at right now, working with sales and marketing. But I never really gave up the songwriting and the worship leading and even playing out. So big picture of what I'm doing in the business space is I get to hear other people's stories, learn what's happening in an industry, and then tell that data in a way that is a new way of hearing that story, and in a way that someone says, hey, that's me. Maybe that can work for me. So that's the creative side on business. When it comes to the creative things that I just haven't stopped for church, I love creating experiences on the weekends that help us to hear that same story again that we've all heard over and over again. Yeah. But then you step into the weekend and you say, hey, that connects to my week. And so, I feel like I'm really doing the same thing, just in two different ways, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. It's all storytelling, and that's what's really making the difference, and that's what connects. And we know that from, as believers looking at scripture, right? We know that Jesus was the ultimate storyteller, and that's how he got his message across and why he was so successful in what he did. Obviously, having the power of God behind him worked really good too. But I would love for you to just kind of break down with us. Do you have any sort of creative process from ideation to final execution? And if so, what does that look like? It doesn't matter which kind of lane you pick here. Either one is fine. Or if you want to share both, that's fine too.
Yeah, I would say I use similar methods, whether it's the church and worship side of things, or it's the business and the marketing side of things. So that's helpful. I will do creative work either solo or in a team. I do those both, I would say, equally. Yeah. The process is going to be unique and the outcomes are similar. So I'll either start with a team or I will start solo. And so let's start with solo, because I think that's going to resonate with a lot of creatives. And if I'm, just given a project on the business side of things and someone says, hey, we need you to come up with 3 new stories of other customers that have used this solution and kind of draft up these 3 stories and then bring them to the next team meeting so we can start, generating initiatives around them, whether it's new videos or a one pager or something like that. But I have to come up with those stories. I have to go find them. So it starts with inspiration on a solo level. The same thing is, let's say, just over in songwriting, I'll be spending time with my family, or I'll watch a movie. Those are very inspiring for me, or I'll read a book, or I'll just randomly be inspired. And I'll take that initial goal of go find the story. And I put myself into the brain of the individual in that story. If I'm a customer, I'm going to think of what does it feel like to be this customer and make these decisions? What does it feel like when I show up at my 9 to 5 and now this particular solution has helped what I do in my job to find purpose, to make a difference, whether it's, the stockholders, whether it's the other people I'm co-selling, or then if it's over in my personal life, it is, how does this make me better? Or even how does this resonate with the pain that I'm experiencing? And how do I cope with my pain through this song? So the first thing solo that I would do is put myself into that headspace where I'm not writing or creating as an outsider looking in. I very much try to do a little bit of, what's it called? I was reading an article about Heath Ledger of how he just put himself into the mind of the Joker.
Mind of the character. Yeah.
So that's going to be my first thing for solo. The team stuff is a little different, but I mean, does that resonate with you, Dustin? Like, I don't know what your kind of solo creative process is.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask you because you came right out the gate, and I think most, whether creatives acknowledge it or not, that the first step of the process is inspiration. I think a lot of the times creatives tend to lean towards just trusting in random bits of inspiration rather than getting out and being intentional about it. And I love what you were saying about, like, in this particular instance where you're talking about solo creative and your inspiration is not just waiting for something to strike, but you're intentionally putting a foot forward and going into the mind of the person, the mind of the audience, the mind of the character, the mind of the story, right? And so okay, now I can feel what they're feeling, I can sense what they're sensing, I can see what they're seeing, and so because of that, I can create something that they are able to receive better, right? So I would love to know for you. That sounds extremely intentional. So what is the intentional versus random balance of inspiration for you? Are you a collector, right? Of kind of as you see things and just kind of putting it in the bank so that when you do sit down, it's kind of how songwriters write. You talked about songwriting a little bit, or is it very intentional? Like, I'm going to give myself 90 minutes and I'm going to brainstorm as much quantity of ideas as possible and just go after it.
That's a great question. And I will answer that in 2 ways. The first thing that I would encourage people is that it doesn't have to always start with inspiration, but it always must include inspiration at some point. And good. So what that means to me is sometimes I have been given the task to create something. And as I mentioned, in my marketing job at my 9 to 5 marketing of saying, hey, we need you to create something that tells this story.
Right.
That's not wildly inspiring. It's not that I've seen some, feature film of an Academy Award winning actor and now I feel something. It's like, no, I don't feel anything yet. So what I first do is I start to learn the stories and the players of what does it feel like to be a CFO of a large multi-million-dollar organization What are the conversations that they're having when they walk through those doors, they park their car, they walk up into their office, and what are the burdens they're feeling? What are the things that get them excited? What are the parts of their days they like, the parts of the days they don't like? And I actually put on that mentality. And as I'm wearing that mindset, and I think it's called method acting,
That's it. Yep.
as I'm wearing that is where I find inspiration along that journey. And so I put myself into those shoes, and then I look for those things that are inspiring. Okay. So that's, I would say, intentionally seeking inspiration. And then all of a sudden I'll find it. I'll say, that's it. That makes me feel. And I think I want to, before I go into the other side of my inspiration, I just said that makes me feel. I believe that art is anything that makes me feel something. Now, that might make me feel angry. That might make me feel happy. That might make me feel sad. But it's always fascinating to me when someone says, well, that's not art. And they get all upset about it and they get angry. And I'm like, no, it's doing the thing right now. It's making you feel the thing. And so our feelings are the result of some sort of art. Back to my solo creative, and let's say particularly songwriting. I also do a little bit of just literature writing, but primarily I write songs. I will randomly find an inspiration. And I would say for me, I never, ever, ever put it on the shelf. As fresh as that inspiration is, I try to immediately sit down with it, and as much time, 5 minutes to 45 minutes, whatever that is, in that moment when I hear it in my head, I have a phrase, I've got a thought, anything like that. Maybe I was playing guitar to practice, but then I got an idea that was new. So I stop everything and I put down as much as I can. And so the two tools that I use, by the way, when I have those inspirational moments hit, notes and I think it's memo recordings. I'm pulling up my phone right now.
Oh, yeah.
Voice memos. That's what notes and voice memos on my iPhone. I'm very grateful for those. And I'll be driving home from work and I'll immediately say, nope, I'm not going to listen to the radio. I'm not going to listen to music. I'm just going to pull up my voice memos and just sing those lines out loud, all these little hooks for the 10 minutes I'm driving, whatever that is. If I'm at home practicing music and then something hits, I pull out my notes, I start fiddling, and I just fiddle with it and keep flowing until I see that moment's gone. And it will indeed go. I rarely get everything in one setting, but I give everything I have for that short initial moment. 5 to 45 minutes is what I've seen.
Yeah.
Those then I do just keep in an archive that then later I can use that as the beginning of my inspirational journey, saying, hey, all right, I'm going to create something. Where can I go? And so that's one of my lanes that I can go. So it's whether, it's all, hopefully that's helpful with kind of the two lanes that I live in.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's so much in there to unpack about like immediately nurturing fresh ideas. Me and another friend of mine in the Indiana area, we've always said for each other, we use the phrase create quickly. Like when inspiration hits or when the idea strikes, create quickly as much as it'll go and ride that wave as far as it'll take you. It may, like you said, it may only take you a certain percentage of the way there, but then you've got the kind of essence of the idea in its most fleshed out form as possible. I love also what you were saying too about intentionally putting yourself into the areas for inspiration when you were talking about kind of getting in that headspace. And I think you got into the headspace, the method acting, right? Which a lot of marketers use who are in that space and trying to market things to a group of people, that you get into that headspace. And then once you're there, you kind of you're in that realm. It's like putting on the virtual goggles from Apple, right? Once you're in that realm, then you go, I see that thing over there that I didn't see before. And so I think oftentimes as creatives, we miss the fact that we can get random bits of of inspiration, but we must put ourselves in the right atmosphere for it, whether it be the right people, the right setting, the right environment, the right mind space, the right tools, right? Notes and voice memos are probably like songwriters' two best friends. Every songwriter I know, they always have their notes app and their voice memo app open at all times, ready to rock. I would love to know, are there any other than kind of the method acting kind of mindset, are there any particular routines or rituals that you follow to foster creativity?
Yeah. So when I'm going to be writing some sort of written content, so not writing songs, which would be then melody and lyric, but just, a blog article, long form article, writing out my notes for a presentation, because I do public speaking as well, that I implement a lot of this. I do think you need to have a separation of space, and that can be done basically anywhere with some sort of noise separator. So I've got a pair of headphones that I very much appreciate that's got noise canceling. I can then either put in just the noise canceling, so it's silent. Sometimes I'll use binaural beats. Sometimes I'll use some sort of very rhythmic piano, some sort of instrumental, generally non-lyrical, because the lyrics impact my thought process, because I'm always listening to lyric.
Yep.
But it changes my environment and my headspace, so I don't feel like I'm sitting in an office, or I'm sitting in a coffee shop, or I'm sitting at my kitchen table. It gives me a difference of space. That's perhaps just how my brain is wired. I tend to get distracted by the things around me, and noise canceling does help me to center myself. The next thing that I definitely do is I go on Do Not Disturb. I think it's very important with our electronics to, if you're creating, put the digital piece of paper in front of you. And don't do anything else. Just go into some sort of deep work mode and let your mind do what it can do. The best thing I could possibly give to anyone who wants to create is just when you separate noise and you separate the screen and you let your mind go, that's oftentimes helpful. Now, I've heard other people say that it actually can inhibit their creativity, because they're like, wait, if I can think of anything and I'm focused, I can't think of anything. But for me, this works well as far as a lot of my environmental tools.
Hey, I want to interrupt this episode real quick just to ask you if there's anything that we're saying in this episode that resonates with you and you're like, this all sounds great, but I need help implementing these things. I would love to talk with you more about that. Go to dustinp.com, click on the Let's Talk button, and let's talk about how we can help you know yourself, your process, and your teams so that you can create greater things together. I want to shift into kind of managing multiple creative outlets at the same time. You've mentioned a lot of things here. You have the marketing gig, your 9 to 5, you have the weekend, worship leading, you're writing literature, you're speaking, you're writing songs, all these different things. How do you manage and organize multiple creative projects simultaneously?
Yeah. Generally in order of the most urgent item. And the reason is I will not be able to sit down and have a creative songwriting time when I know that backed up to my 30-minute block is something else that's far more urgent. And so I look at everything and say, what is most urgent? What is on my brain that's maybe stressing me out, maybe increasing my blood pressure a little bit? Knock it out now. And the more creative I can be is deeply contingent on, is everything hitting their deadlines? And so I've found that sometimes people get upset that they can't create, like, oh, I really want to write more music, but then I have all these deadlines. And so I try to carve out time so I can actually create, but then I still have these deadlines. I would just say, if you have a deadline and you're not sure if you're going to hit it, you probably aren't going to create your best. That's my opinion. So just go hit the stuff right away. Get it done early. So carve out all as much time as you can. Just like literally get that project done, ready to go. So it's just on the shelf, ready to pull off the shelf whenever you need it. And so as soon as that is done, then you have margin to create more. But I truly believe that it's very difficult to be truly creative and generating new ideas without margin like that. Now, let's get past the first inspiration. So, Dustin, I kind of shared with you, I want the aha moment. I want that sparkle. I want the feeling that I'm going to chase. Okay. Once you do have that and you know your direction, I do think the edit can be organized well. And so I know what my inspiration is for this particular customer profile that I'm going to write for a new demographic I'm going to market to. I have the inspiration. I've got the general story. And now it just needs a little bit of building, and it needs a little bit of meat and bones. And I don't have to be in a huge creative space to put the meat and the bones on it. I would also say, once you kind of got your general hook line for the song, your general framework for the verse, you maybe have verse 1, verse 2, a little bit of kind of bridgy thing. Guess what? You don't have to have a magic moment to finish that project. No. And so I would definitely say, when you're into the meat and bones and in the edit, past your magic moment, you just need to get it done. Say, hey, I'm going to do an hour, 2 hours, and I'm not going to do anything else except put meat and bones on my outline for my public speaking. I've got everything done. Now we're going to move forward. And then say, hey, I'm not going to leave here from this session until I at least have a bad verse 2. I have a bad bridge. And then we're going to say, hey, I'll come back to it later, but I'm going to do the work. And so I would say, once you're in meat and bones, that's easier than your magic moment.
So you're talking about editing. You're saying too, in this edit phase for you, that you're taking kind of the big block of the idea and you're whittling it down to what you're actually going to use. Is that correct?
Yeah. I don't think that you don't have magic the entire time. And I think that people that look for magic the entire creative process are looking for something that, in my opinion, does not exist.
Doesn't exist. Yeah.
You get the three big pieces to your story that you're telling. You kind of have your initial moment. You kind of have your main character. You've got the big problem, and then the solution. You already know those pretty quickly into the creative inspiration. Right. Okay. From there, just put in the details. The details are not going to be magic. They just kind of take up a little more time to build up the anticipation, build up the tense, intensity. Same thing with music. I think that with music, every single line you can't view as it's going to be magic. Because then if you do, you think you're going to hold way too tightly to every single edit. Everything. Yeah, you're going to have one magic line. I think that in every song, there's like one magic line, maybe two magic lines. You can hang on to that. Everything else is just the edit. It's just the build, edit, build, edit, build, edit. So there is discipline in that for sure. And forcing yourself to say, I'm willing to do this badly for it to be done is better than waiting for the next magic and then it never gets done.
Yeah. Done is always better than incomplete. I have a friend and coach, Stephen Brewster, who always says that creativity is more muscle than magic. And I love that. And I use that all the time when I'm feeling like I'm just not inspired. I'm just not inspired. And it's like, okay, well, the inspiration piece is over. It's time to do the work. I do want to say too, in the magic piece, we both kind of agree that, the magic part doesn't really exist. I would say I agreed to it, and I would agree to it up until there's a certain point. And I'm gonna speak into like performance artists like you and I, who when we're playing in a band together, you kind of always have that moment, on stage or in the session or whatever, where you just kind of non-verbally look at each other and you're just like, this is it. And the it part, that's the magic, right? Of like all of these, deep stories and hurts and pains and losses and experience and talents and shortfalls and all these things coming together, humans to create this beautiful music. In that moment, you're like, well, this is some sort of magic, which, John, you and I know that, the source of that is bigger than any kind of magic, right? But I want to get into the deadlines piece that you talked about a little bit ago. So we've got the inspiration, we've edited it down, and you're facing this deadline in front of you. How do you hit deadlines consistently? I work with a lot of solo creatives who just kind of go, the deadlines are piling up. The deadlines are piling up. And I have things that I coach them through on that, but I'd love to hear your perspective. How do you hit deadlines consistently?
Man, Dustin, I think I'm gonna make a bunch of people mad. Here's the reality: you hit them. Period. Full stop. You hit them. There is no missing the deadline, and I think there is. I'm gonna go all in on this, Dustin.
Good.
I think that there is laziness. I think there is selfishness.
Yeah.
And I think that if you lay your own desires below this purpose of creating, and this is beyond trying to make sure that you keep your boss happy and your company happy. I hope that each person that listens to this content understands the gift of creativity, so much so that it is a responsibility to finish the job. Because if you have the ability to create, but then you are unwilling to apply the grit to get it done. And what I mean grit is you stay up until 1 a.m., 2 a.m. You get 4 hours of sleep because you have to get this done by the deadline. I see too oftentimes people blame the magic. I just wasn't feeling it. I just couldn't get it out. And honestly, I think that a lot of times it's just they were just being selfish. They didn't realize how important, how much of a responsibility it is to bring creativity into this world. Now, I will say, once you get into a better discipline of saying, no, we hit deadlines. We might be bad. We might get a D+ grade, but we get the deadline done. That is always better. And here's what has helped me to get the grit to make the deadlines. It's not that I hit A+ grades every time that I create something. It's that I understand I might think it's an A+ when I deliver it. I might be like, oh man, this is amazing. I nailed it. That line is perfect. This story is perfect. I'm going to hit. Guess what? It's not. Art always sucks like 3 weeks later. And you're like, wait, why did I do that? And it's like, oh, because you're always going to keep seeing a new angle no matter what. Yeah. What is beautiful is that it's done. Yeah. That is what's beautiful about art. And so when we look for we blame the magic, oh, the magic wasn't there, or we think that there is some 100% that we can reach. I've actually found none of that is real. I grew up in the American school system that gives us, A, B, C, D, F. And so for some reason, we think that there are these like grades to creativity. And I don't think so. I think it's either done or not done. And therefore, if it's done or not done, we can always get it done on time. That's my opinion. I know it's real strong, Dustin. I know.
I love it. I love it. I love to get things done. So you're speaking my love language. 2 final questions for you. You mentioned earlier about kind of just a couple little of the voice memo and the notes on your phone. Are there any other tools or softwares that you rely on to stay organized and productive?
Yeah, 100%. So I live and die by my calendar. And so I actually block out times that I'm going to be doing certain things, whether that's, hey, I'm going to spend this hour putting on my headphones and getting into the mind of the story that I'm needing to write. Okay, so I block out everything. My calendar every week is full. It's not full of meetings. It's full of this is what I'm doing during this time. So controlling your calendar is absolutely essential. And then I would also say a lot of the busy work when it comes to literature writing or just writing blogs and long form articles and presentations and work, all these things. It gets a bad rap because people use it incorrectly, but I would say there are a lot of AI tools out there that can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you.
Yeah.
So I have a particular app. I'm not going to endorse any particular one because I think they're all pretty great right now. But I will say I've got an app that's on my phone that I use on my browser as well. But what I'll do is I'll say, in my main thread, and I've programmed my main thread with a lot of my own content and say, this is how I write. These are the words I use. These are the words I don't use. So I've programmed a big thread, but I'll just talk. I'll say, hey, I'm going to brainstorm an idea. I'm going to talk, until I tell you I'm stopping. And then I want you to point out some of the big ideas that you're hearing from what I'm saying. And so there are these, algorithmic tools that then the algorithm will read through what I'm saying, just voice to text. And then I'll be able to see the technology reflect back to me something that I might not have picked up that I had said or thought.
Yeah.
I do this with song topics. If I say, hey, I'm writing a song about this topic. This is my big story. Here are all the different things. Give me every angle you can think of ways that I can tell this story differently and things that are important. Mm-hmm. Same thing with a business process or presentation. I always say, hey, where are my logical gaps in here? And so I use AI a lot just to stir the pot for me. I never use it for my final product, but I think that it is a great assistance for us to see ourselves. It's kind of like a digital mirror in a lot of ways. We use mirrors all the time to make sure we're looking good. I mean, hey, does this hat look right? Does my hair look good? Your hat looks great, Dustin. Thanks. And so we see mirrors all the time. I use AI as a digital mirror to make sure and say, what does this look like?
Man, that's so fascinating. I hear almost daily of different friends of mine that are using AI in their creative process. And every time I'm enlightened by it, I'm not kind of like put off by it because it's just a tool. Like we can't replace the human experience and the human emotion and human creation. But if we just remember that it's just a tool, man, the possibilities are endless. And I love how you use it for brainstorming because you definitely do miss some of those things, even if you do have a note taker or a recorder, for it to be able to spit back at you like, hey, give me the big hits here. What did you hear? Is super cool. So I've taken up a ton of your time today, and I'm super thankful for that. I just want to end with, in this conversation that we're having about creativity and the creative process, any last piece of advice that you would want to share with someone who is feeling overwhelmed with the amount of work they have, or maybe overwhelmed with the amount of work they don't have in their creative process? What would you say to someone like that?
Yeah. So one of my favorite creative books is Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull. Would highly recommend that. And the reason is I got one idea of many, but I'll share one with you right now. And Ed shares the story of creativity in this kind of writer's block, or this moment of, I need to create something as this mountain. And he says, we generally have three options. We either go to the left, we go to the right, or we go straight up over the mountain. We don't really know. Is there an ocean over here, a river over here? Is there a dangerous animal over here? We don't know. We've never been here before. Yeah. We just have this giant mountain in front of us. And he says, the number one thing we cannot do is wait. We cannot wait. We've got to make a decision and make it now, because the decision that you make now is going to be better than the decision that you wait on and you wait on and you wait on, because you might make the wrong decision. You might go left and realize, well, shoot, there's a river there and I need to go the other way. But guess what? You might go left and it might be the right one. And you might have just saved yourself a bunch of time. Yeah. And so creativity is actually a learning process. It's not actually generating anything as much as it is just learning something and missing something and failing something. Adam Grant, I love this concept that he says that the more that we actually value growth, is then we're more willing to fail. And so I want to encourage everyone, fail fast, fail hard, just make a decision now. And the faster that you make those decisions, the faster that you're going to hit those deadlines and actually succeed at creating.
Yeah, I love it. No more standing still. Just get out there and create. Done is better than not done. Always, right?
Always.
John, thank you so much for your time, man. It's been a real pleasure. Is there anybody or anywhere that anyone can kind of find you digitally online? Are you on any online spaces?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of my business content there. I try to be as creative as possible. You can just find me at John Staub, and you can see all my notes and stuff here. You can find me on Instagram. I post a lot about just kind of my own journey in life with my family and fitness and health. But I also love to share my music and different thoughts. So feel free to find me on It's John Staub on Instagram.
I love it. And Staub is Staub. If you're
that's right, as in bravo.
Bravo. I love it. I love it. Well, John, thank you so much for being on the show today. Thank you all for tuning in, listening, watching, wherever you're doing that at. Next week, back with episode 73. We're going to get a little bit behind the scenes on my new book, Growing Upward, that comes out later this year. Can't wait to talk to you then on the Creativity Made Easy podcast.